Welcome back, listeners. We're back with another episode of the Performance Hub podcast, and we're joined by none other than Lauren.
Hey, Tim.
How are we, Loz?
Great. How are you?
Brilliant.
Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. Never a chore. What we wanted to speak about today, and I guess to clue people in, what we went through yesterday was a little bit of staff PD, development type stuff. And Loz, you were presenting.
I was.
And as per usual, it was really good.
Thanks, mate.
Great job. But I think some of the topics would be really useful for people to hear, particularly, and what we're going to try and talk about and unpack here is how to go about stopping doing something.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So how do you break a bad habit? I think the habit thing is getting more and more attention these days. But we know, especially in our space, there's the exercise part, there's the food part, but a big part of nutrition is how do you get somebody, or how can somebody stop doing things that they know they probably shouldn't be doing?
Yeah.
Right? And that's the situation, I think, where it's not just a nutrition problem. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah. Yep. You're on the money there. Yeah.
Great. So how do I break a bad habit?
Wow. I'm going to do some myth busting here. You can't really stop it. You can't really break it. But we can help. We can help. So I know that you know my feelings about people who say you can break a habit in 21 days.
Yeah, 21 days, change your life.
Yeah, exactly.
3 easy payments, $99.99, Visa, MasterCard, Amex, and you've got a whole new life.
Exactly. Why aren't we all doing it? Right? Yeah, how do you... Okay, so essentially it's quite hard. Habits, just quickly, habits are built up over time, and they're pretty much at a point where a lot of people want to start, breaking the habit. They're at a point where they're so automated and automatic that you don't even realize that you're doing it half the time. I read the other day that habits can actually determine your behavior rather than your intention. So you might have really good intentions, but your behavior is going to override that, or your habits are going to override that pretty quickly. And every time you do it, it's going to get stronger and stronger. So what you essentially need to start doing is... Well, there's a lot of ways. Yeah, where do I begin?
I think even unpacking that little bit at the start is important, because I don't know about you, but I have these conversations all the time. And I think separating that idea of intentions from behavior is important, because it's so easy for people to fall into a trap or fall into a bit of a vicious cycle, maybe if we refer to it that way, where let's say that they want to lose some weight, right? And their issue has been, look, I snack, and when I snack on the wrong food, or, late at night, I'm eating the wrong thing, or what have you. So their intention is to change and to stop doing it. But sometimes they're still going to do it. And if you don't understand that a habit is actually separate from your intentions, then you can start to blame yourself really quickly.
Yeah.
And those feelings of guilt creep in, and then it quickly turns into what's the point in trying, or I'm never going to be able to do this, and it becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So I think if you're listening to this and that sounds like a familiar scenario for you, understand that, like Lauren was saying, habits aren't a conscious thing. So it's not the same as you making a poor decision. In fact, you're not making a decision. The habit is doing it for you, right? Because one of my favorite things I've read about habits is, they're a necessary part of our existence, because if we had to think about every single thing that we did each day, we would not get anything done.
Yeah.
The amount of signals required, from your brain to even take your hand to your nose is insane. Right? So if we're thinking about all those things consciously, it's impossible.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really important distinction right off the bat. It's not about how bad you want to do it. It's not about you making the wrong choice sometimes. It's about you have developed a habit, which means you're in fact doing things without making a choice and without thinking about it at all.
Yeah, and a lot of the time, I don't know if you're the same, Max, but you find that like people have harbored these habits from like it's taken 30 years to get there. Like a lot of not all of them, but a lot of them do kind of, I don't know, they can stem from childhood. Like even like I know I have habits that come from childhood. So and they don't really go away. You can definitely do things, I think you're probably the same. I'm at a point now where 95% of the time you're good. Like they're kind of not there, but there are times where that automatic behavior kind of slips in and you've got to stop yourself.
Absolutely. I'll throw myself under the bus for the listeners here. So it's relevant right now. My uncle is visiting. So he lives in the States. My family's all from Ireland, right? So like growing up with it, it's my level of normal of how much people drink is probably very different to what, no, I'm being serious here. And it's, having spent time, my wife's family and stuff and being like, oh, nobody really does that here. So now I'm more aware that it's definitely on the higher end. And I'm not someone who really drinks a lot as a general rule. Like part of that is I've got a young family and all the rest of it. So you know what, my weekends aren't exactly the wildest thing in the world. And during the week, like you're working, etc. So it's not something I habitually do at home. However, on last weekend, my uncle's out, granddad, they're like, we're going to go to the pub, we're going to have a drink. So that's like literally what my family does. It's like, we've got to go have a drink. It's not like, would you like to grab a coffee? It's always, we're going to grab a drink. It's just how it's always been. So I go and, we're probably there for 90 minutes and I probably drink 5 pints. And, I'm aware that that's too much, right? I didn't drive. I knew full well before I got there. But I think it's an interesting reminder that, okay, I'm not someone who consciously chooses to drink or anything like that. And in my home environment, I really don't very often. However, put in the right environment with members of my family that always drink and we're in a bar, then I will default because that's very much kind of the environment that I was raised in.
Yep.
And it's like, do you want another one? Yeah. Don't even think about it. And it's just like a habitual thing. Like you just take it in turns. Everyone just goes up and gets around. And it's just, default behavior.
It is interesting that you say that because like obviously it's come from, growing up. So that's one thing. But another thing about habits is it's actually like, as you just said, like it can be even the people that you're around kickstarts this automatic behavior. So it's not even like, as you said, the environment's a massive thing. And that's one of the things that we should touch on about changing when you're looking at changing habits. But cues like time of day, location, people, all these different things go into that automatic behavior. It's actually quite interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like, as you said at the start, you can't break these bad habits. So for me, I haven't broken that habit. Because as you said, put me in the right time, the right place, the right people, or the wrong time, place, wrong people. Then I will do that same behavior.
Yep.
But what can we do, Loz? So if we can't break a bad habit, what can we do instead?
And we do. Well, it is quite hard. There are quite a few things that goes into it. So first thing,
that's fine. No, I guess like I'm trying to lead you, so it's all good. What you said yesterday was thinking about it as like almost reprogramming, in a sense of we can't break a habit, but we can absolutely form a new habit to take the place of the previous habit.
Yeah.
So rather than, because I think that's an important thing in of itself, right? That people don't understand. It's like you don't break bad habits. So get that out of your head. Mm-hmm. You form new habits.
Yep.
So rather than trying to stop doing the old thing, which is the conventional way to approach it, I'm just going to stop eating Tim Tams, or I'm going to stop having cheese, or I'm going to stop having the wine, what have you. Instead, what we want to focus on is all right, when you're in that situation where you want to have the thing, like, what are you doing instead? What's the new thing you're going to start doing rather than always focusing on not doing, if that makes sense? All right, so if we can't break the bad habit, right, if we're about to do the thing, right, the bad habit, it's like, what are the strategies to not do it? Like, what do we want to make sure that we do if we're trying to stop doing that thing?
Okay, so there are a couple of things that we can focus on. One thing is re-engineering your environment. So we spoke about environment before. So if you know, like I know, that if there is chocolate in front of me, even if it's not open, it's on. Forget about it. So initially, what you could do is just either not buy it, so you could remove it, or make it difficult to get. So essentially what we need to do is focus on disrupting or creating friction to, if that's the cue, if you see Tim Tams and the habit is right, let's go, or if you're stressed, you go to the Tim Tams, you need to create a bit of friction to get to that thing. Okay. So, and that's about, changing the environment around you. So if you know that you're stressed and that you eat, and that's the habit, you don't even realize that you're doing it. I actually had this before. I've told you this a few times. I actually there was this massive thing of lollies that we had for a party. So I couldn't get rid of them. The party hadn't been. So my husband actually put it up on the highest possible shelf in the pantry. So what I had to do is get the stepladder out, get onto the first rail, first section of the pantry, and then tippy-toe it up to get this box of lollies.
Love it.
It worked.
Yeah.
That's a big disruptor. So it's about, and these things all intertwine together, but it's about creating awareness of what you actually do. So it's like, once you're aware, like, oh, when I'm stressed or when I'm tired, I go for the Tim Tams, for example. You need to be able to create awareness so then you can actually be like, oh, okay, I need to disrupt this cue. That's the first, or I need to disrupt this behavior. Okay, so with any way you can, I know that you've mentioned like putting Post-it notes even on the thing. If you can't get rid of it, a lot of people say they have like kid snacks around, so you can't really get rid of that. But if you have a Post-it note or something just to disrupt it, enough for you to actually have that cognitive awareness to be like, oh, that's not actually what I want to do. It's disrupting that automatic behavior. That sometimes it's not enough. Like, it's not going to take like a week.
No.
But if you continually do it and you continually create that awareness and like take things out of the house, if you can take them out of the house, over time, it does get easier.
Absolutely. I think that stuff, it sounds really, I guess, simple, because it is, but it's really powerful. And I think if we revisit that idea that, habits aren't a choice, so you're not making a decision, adding that like point of friction makes it a decision. So for you, if you're just going to automatically reach for the lollies, right, that's habitual. Really hard to stop doing that. However, if you have to go and get a stepladder and then climb up the pantry, like, that's not a habitual thing that you do every day, right? So we're just adding something that makes you stop and think. It's like, oh, actually, wait, do I need this? Because I think what a lot of people would do is, like, once you've had like the first one, then you're like, I'll stuff it. Right. So it's kind of too far gone by that point. And the Post-it notes thing, even putting things inside a container, and I know that sounds silly, but for people that are used to just like reaching into the fridge or reaching into the pantry and just like grabbing a piece of chocolate or what have you, putting it inside a Tupperware container means somebody has to physically open the Tupperware container before they get it. And when they go, oh, actually, I'm doing that thing again. And it's just that little bit of awareness, like, I'm about to do it. Because again, a lot of people, like, they don't think about it until after they've done it. And then it's like, oh, I'm failing again. So just getting ahead of the curveball, I suppose. And
it's enough of like that snippet is enough for you to be like, okay, that's going to take me towards my goal. I don't eat that. It's going to get me further away. So it just needs to be that tiny little snippet of time, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. And I liked yesterday, like, I'm a big fan of keeping things really simple, and also kind of creating frameworks, I suppose is the word I'd use, that are going to stick with people and just make sense.
Yeah.
And the one, like, I've used this before, but I think the way you delivered it yesterday was like this if-then approach.
Yeah.
So do you want to quickly go through that? Because I think all of this stuff is well and good in theory.
Yeah.
But a lot of people would be like, oh, okay, so like, how do I actually do it?
Yeah.
Whereas the if-then part, that's like bridging that gap between theoretically, this is how you stop doing these things, but here's how you actually do it every day.
Yep. So essentially, I found out about this a couple of months ago, and I actually had to do it. I did it over a 2-week period, so I have actually done it, and I felt that it worked. It was quite good.
Great.
Yep. So it's pretty much an if-then strategy or implementation plan, whatever you want to call it. Essentially what you're doing is you write down what your goal is, or like what you want to stop. So if you have a habit that you want to stop, write that down. And then I found 2 strategies. So I wrote down 2 if-then strategies to complement what I wanted to change, that behavior change or that habit change. So essentially it could be like if you wanted to get up and go to the gym in the morning, it's but then sometimes when the alarm goes off, you snooze it, you go back to bed, you know, you fall into that, which a lot of people do. The if then could be like, if or when the alarm goes off, I will immediately get up and get dressed, put my shoes on, go to the gym. I know that sounds really silly, but the power of writing it down actually kind of solidifies it, I think. But you're solving the problem before it even happens, so you know exactly what to do when you're put into that situation. There's a lot of time where I think people are like, oh yeah, I'll just, you know, yeah, I just have to do it, you know. But once you actually state it and it's very specific to a specific behavior, it's actually very powerful and it sticks in your mind.
100%. It's that if this happens or when this happens, I will do this.
Yeah.
And again, like if we think about like habits basically being like programmed behaviors, okay, this is like a way to, I guess, hack it in a way. Because it's like, well, you are kind of creating a habit. But in a conscious sense, it's like, yeah, as we know, the more times you do that, so, you know, the first day that you get out of bed immediately, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, like it's going to get easier over time to perform that habit.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting because it is, it's something that you can do and it's really effective in those early habit change stages. So like obviously longer term, you're not going to need it, but initially it's really good because it keeps your motivation high and it's so simple to do and it works really well. And as you said, another thing about habits that you just said, we said it earlier that the more you do it and the more you get a positive reward from it. So going to the gym, you feel really good. That's a reward, right? The more you do it, the more automated that behavior is going to be, or the habit that you want to obtain. So these implementation plans are there to help you, as you just said, like get on track and keep doing the thing that you want to be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. It's really good. I was thinking of an example of this as well, something that I used years ago with a client, and it worked really, really well. And she would struggle. Grocery shops were a struggle. She'd always like grab something. But more specifically, it was what tended to derail her, which this will sound familiar to a lot of people, end of the day. So, and she'd feel like this in and of itself is not a big deal, but the way that she felt about it became a big deal because it would kind of derail everything else that she was doing. And it was things like when she needed to fill up with petrol, she would grab chocolate, chips, possibly both. You know, they'd be gone within 2 minutes of getting back in the car, right? And every time she did that, it would be like the next 3, 4, 5 days were kind of a write-off. So it was like, okay, how do you attack that situation? And the good thing with it, like she was aware that she was doing it, you know, and she'd get home and then like quickly throw the wrappers and stuff in the recycling because she's feeling ashamed of it and all the rest of it. So again, I'm sure people would somewhat relate to that. And it was pretty much that framework of, all right, well, how about this? Instead of saying like, well, how about you just go in and like you don't buy it? Like, that's great. But she knows that. But she's habitually picking it up. It's like once she's picked it up, it's a write-off, right? So it was like, all right, what are we going to do? And it was, when I fill up with petrol, I'm going to go and buy, those like Mount Franklin sparkling with like lime or whatever.
Yeah.
Because she's like, she likes mineral water. I'm like, great. It's refreshing, cool. And it was like a deliberate action. And she even had a little like post-it. I'm a big fan of like visual stuff. So it was like a post-it note behind the steering wheel. No, it wasn't on the steering wheel. It was on the fuel thing, like above, like where you would go to pop it open.
Oh.
So it's like pop it open, boom. It was like a little thing like sparkling water or whatever. So when she walked in to pay for petrol, the first thing that she did deliberately was like, I'm going to go get a sparkling water.
Yeah.
And then once she got the sparkling water, she's like, I'm getting the sparkling water.
Yeah.
And she's no longer, or I'm sure there were times when she's like, I want a Mars bar or whatever. She's like, no, I've got my sparkling water. So she's disrupted that normal cue of like going in and just automatically doing it. And I think, a lot of people can probably think back to times when they've successfully made a change. And it's probably by following something like this, even if they weren't aware of doing it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
It's great.
So I guess that, if you're doing that for an implementation, it could be like, when I fill up with petrol, I'm going to buy, or I'm going to Australia to buy Mount Franklin. Like, that's not simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like it because I think for two reasons I think it works. One, for all the reasons that you outlined and all the science. Two, because it's counterintuitive in itself. Because most of the time people think about, I just need to stop doing it. And they're trying to rely on willpower. But when you're saying, no, when this happens, what are you going to do instead? So it's like, actually, I'm going to do something else.
Yeah.
And that in of itself kind of disrupts that regular thought pattern. That's a theory. It's not necessarily backed by hard science. But anecdotally, it works really well.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
Great. What else are we going to finish on here in terms of how to stop bad habits, do you think, Loz? I think if we recap so far so people don't, hopefully we haven't lost the listeners, habits aren't a conscious thing. They are subconscious behaviors or subconscious, I guess, programs, neural programs that we've developed in order to make our lives more efficient. So if you do something and you've been trying to do it, don't feel bad, because it doesn't mean that you've been making poor choices. It means that you need to re-engineer your environment. You need to disrupt that cue. You need to create some awareness around what you're doing in that moment and some friction that gives you the chance to actually do all those things. So out of sight, out of mind, all that type of stuff is a good general strategy. But I guess if you were going to go, all right, maybe we role play a little bit here. We'll do a little bit of role play. Get your mind out of the gutters, listeners. This would be habit-based role play. So let's just say my issue is I eat well throughout the day, right? At night, I sit down watching, what would I be watching? A bit of Maths, Married at First Sight, or The Real Housewives, or whatever else it is. And then I want something. So I go and get the ice cream tub and I sit back on the couch. And I'm like, I'm doing all the right things, but I'm eating ice cream and I'm eating a decent amount of ice cream every night. And that's the reason why I'm not losing any weight. What could my, if then or when then, what could that look like?
Okay. Well, I could say to you, when I sit down on the couch, or if I sit down on the couch to watch TV, then I'm going to go and get, what would it be, like a glass of water, for example. I could say that, but but that's probably, I think we've all been there, where it's like, you're not actually, we were talking about this before, why are you doing it? Like, what's the purpose of that, of the ice cream? Like, so you delve a bit deeper and find out, like, a glass of water probably isn't going to satisfy that. I mean, it might,
Unlikely, but yeah.
Yeah, unlikely. So it would be about working with the client and figuring out the if then would definitely be like if sit down on the couch, I'm going to reach for, or I'm immediately going to go and get X, but it would be working with a client to figure out what could satisfy that need, because all these behaviors, automatic things, they are there to fulfill a need. So doing something completely out of the box isn't going to satisfy it. So it could be, finding something that works, even for now, even for short term, like instead of ice cream, what would fill that void? Popcorn.
I do like popcorn.
Yep. Are you hungry? All these things, you could go into that.
I like that immediately thing as well. So it's like when I sit down, you don't wait for the thing to happen. It's like, no, for me, it's like, okay, when you sit down on the couch to watch maths, you are immediately going to get a bag of popcorn.
Yeah.
And, if it was me, I'd be like, all right, well, can we get those smaller bags of popcorn, like the bulk pack or whatever? It's like, cool. And then you could like layer it again. When you have finished your popcorn, you are immediately going to go and put the wrapper in the bin and brush your teeth. So after you brush your teeth, like, by the way, for all the listeners, if you want to stop late night snacking, brush your teeth after dinner.
Good one.
It disrupts everything. And straight away, there's this internal thought of, it might taste weird if I brush my teeth.
Yeah, 100%.
That's a good way to disrupt. No, I really like that. And I think if you're listening to this and you're thinking, okay, yeah, how can I put it into practice? It's, as Loz said, like, get the notepad out. There is power in writing things down. I think note section of your phone, it would be next best. Don't just think about it. Write it out. If or when, so it's if it's like I guess might happen, but it's when is like, I'm not going to never sit on the couch.
Yeah.
So it's like, when I sit on the couch, I will immediately go and get one of the small bags of popcorn that I bought. When I have finished the popcorn, I will immediately put it in the bin and brush my teeth. Done.
It sounds really simple as it is, but it is so powerful, especially as you said, writing it down. There's something in that.
I know, I think it's a Carl quote. I'll give him credit. I've never heard anybody else say it. But he said, ink it, don't think it.
Oh.
And I'm like, I quite like that.
Oh, yeah, I do like
it's like
that.
the same for like goal setting, any of this stuff. So, we all think about stuff, but I feel like there's a power in writing it out.
Yeah.
It makes it seem more real.
Yes. Yep. And as you said before, like, I really like these statements because they are very specific. So it's like, there's no room for interpretation. There's no room for like, oh, but I might do this, or I've really got to stop doing this. It actually puts something into practice, and as I said, it solves the issue before it even happens. You know what to do, and that in itself, you've done the pre-thinking. So there's no thought there when you're in that moment.
100%.
Minimal.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. So if or when this happens, I will immediately do this.
Yep.
Boom.
Bang.
Bang.
Try it at home. That you can try at home.
Yep. Say hi to Mum. Thanks for listening to the Performance Hub podcast. As always, if you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you happen to be listening to this. And if you have any thoughts or questions based on today's episode, please feel free to get in touch and let us know.